I mean, the first time I got any kind of chance was actually Tracy Rideout from CBC Radio. It was Accents on Toronto, right? I think that's what it is. And it was at the Panasonic Theater, 700 people. At the time, I was managed by this individual. And then Tracy was like, do you think do you know what he's going to do? And then the manager at the time was like, I know him personally, and I don't think he knows what he's going to do.
Welcome back, everyone, to episode number 19 of the Johnny Rogers Show. My guest today, where do I even begin? He's a Juno Award winner in 2019. He won Comedy Album of the Year for his album Good Friend, Bad Grammar. He has a Netflix comedy special as part of their Comedians of the World series. He's appeared on Kevin Hart's LOL network, and he co-stars in the award-winning comedy series called Ramy on Hulu. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dave Merheje.
Yo, thank you.
Hey.
Man, what a wonderful, kind intro.
You gotta butter you up for the audience.
Yeah,
and know what they're getting into.
I feel super grateful.
Oh.
100%.
Well, today's time, I mean, it's good to start on a positive note because you wanted to start with what people would perceive as a negative one, but I don't know. We'll see where we go with it. We're looking at grieving and we're looking at the words empathy. Today, do you want to kind of like expand on that? Why those two words were at the top of your mind when asked?
Sometimes you're like, I heard someone say this. They're saying, like, when someone's like, how are you doing? And then you're like, oh, I'm good, but you're not. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times, sometimes it's just like you're just walking down the street. You really can't get into it with someone. Yeah. But I find like a lot of times, I'm speaking for everyone, it seems like it, but it's like sometimes you hold back because you're like, well, this is kind of heavy if I let them know what's going on for real, and maybe they might not want to hear it. It might damper the conversation or make it sad. But then a lot of the times, so then you got to get used to that, and it just feels kind of fake almost. Like you're not being fake, but you're like, well, I'm not really sharing a lot of times how I feel. So when you had said to think of a word, I was like, those are two experiences that I've had in the last 2 years. Me personally, with grieving and then trying to find empathy, especially with COVID and stuff like that. Trying to remove your selfish thoughts and your selfish needs to think about it in a grander scheme of things. And like, people have lost loved ones. I've lost, loved ones in the last 2 years. So those two, when you said it, those two popped. And originally, I to be honest with you, I was thinking about changing it because I was like, man, I don't want to make this podcast sad.
You're like, how am I going to go promote the next season of Ramy on this sad ass podcast where it sounds more like televised a therapy session?
Yeah. So, but I felt like, you know what, man, I'd rather be honest.
Yeah, no, of course.
I'd rather be honest with you. And
dude, that's what this podcast is.
Okay. So yeah,
you're in the right place, man, because like the whole reason why I wanted to start this podcast was because I was like feeling that in my own life of being like, I don't feel like I'm giving people like a genuine, this is who I am. And I always am like, what am I missing? Like, where's there like a disconnect with people where they're only seeing this thing? And it's like, well, it's because you are not being honest. You're giving them what you think that they want, whether it's like to be entertained or to get your take on something that's happening in the news or whatever it might be that you think is important to the audience. But really, it's just being genuine with yourself. I found the most, and I don't even want to say the most success, because success looks different for everyone, right? Like success to me is being like genuine and seeing people respond positively to that. So I'm like, okay, I feel successful now. Yeah. But I get you, man. I've lost people too in this last 2 years, and it's fucked because you're like, how do I go be funny? How do I go be funny right now?
Yeah. And it kind of like, originally when at the beginning of the the pandemic, it'll be 3 years now, I guess. Yeah. Or two, I remember 2. Yeah. Sorry. 2. It was like, I couldn't do like even Zoom comedy shows, or I remember someone had like uh, a festival had asked me to do something on like Instagram stories or something like that. And I just didn't, I was afraid actually to say no, because I
Mm.
was like, well, if I say no, will they ask me in the future to do other things? But then it took me a while or I was like, man, I'm gonna be honest with myself and them. And I was like, I don't feel happy at this point right now to go on and do this. Like, I don't really feel happy at all. Like, and they're gonna get a dishonest take on whatever I'm doing, because I truly am not happy. And I was like, in my head, I was like, well, if they don't ask me to do anything else after this decision, then so be it. But I don't want to. I don't want to do that anymore. Where I'm just
Mm.
like you said, I'm just I'm not honoring my emotions at that moment.
You're
And be
you're
honest
putting
with
the idea of like work ethic ahead of your own like health, and
you.
it's sucks because it's so, as artists and like entertainers, it's so in our face when everyone is doing something, and it seems like everyone is always doing something at all times, so that if
Yeah.
you say no to an opportunity, you're like, oh, I guess I'm a loser because I'm not doing something right now.
And I'm like much older than you are, so I do remember a time in even in starting stand up, in like where wasn't a heavy social media thing, like there
Hmm.
wasn't Instagram,
Yeah,
Facebook,
yeah.
so you really couldn't see what other people were doing unless they told you. So I remember, so I've been in
God, that
both
must have been so much
spaces.
better though. Just people just bullshitting right to your face. They're like, "Yeah, I did like I got Just for Laughs audition. You know how it is." Like, you're like, "Really?"
It was better in both. It was good and bad in both. Like, the ability that you were able to do this, like, look how beautiful this is. You have the
So
podcast
seamless.
set
It's
up.
all set up. Problem. Yeah.
Exactly. Beautiful backdrop. You know what I mean? You're able to reach more people from your city, whereas like then you didn't have all that. But I mean, also the positive, one of the good things is for your mental health is that you weren't inundated with there wasn't the likes and the stories and what people were doing. You were kind of worrying just about yourself in a sense, and building those were probably the most fond times in stand up for myself, was that in Toronto, running around with like Pat Bircher, Neil Rhodes, Sarah Donaldson, all the comedians from that city at that time, Matt Romont, and really like just kind of, I remember me and Pat Bircher specifically would always like have this beautiful competitive friendly competitive spirit,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it was like about the jokes in a sense, and about finding our voices. I think at that time didn't really clock in trying to get into Just for Laughs, or even making money in a sense. It was more of like we weren't even, for myself, I wasn't even that good at that point to be maybe thinking about that. But there was this like super charged up energy of like running through the city,
Mm.
for every day, almost every night, basically, like working your job and then running to do like 2 to 3 mics if you could, um, that you kind of miss in a sense. You
I
miss
do
I miss
miss that. I do
so,
miss that. I miss like just like, working, like I was working like a breakfast serving job, up at like 6 a.m., done at like 3 o'clock, go home, like shower, eat, and then just out and try to hit as many mics
that
as I could.
energy.
And then just do it again, again and again and again and again. And there's so much joy in it. I'm so happy that we got to experience that before all this comes down. Because I think about comedians now who are just, somebody in 2022 just said, I think I want to be a stand-up comedian. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
I
you're
know.
fucked. Like, it's gonna be like, do TikToks, man. Like that thing is done. Like you can't.
It's like
What are open mics gonna look like right now? You know what I mean? Like I
I mean
can't be good.
it probably right now not, but I mean it's just such a resilient group of people, like in general.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you know,
Oh yeah,
it's
we'll
funny because
find a way.
you find a way
Yeah,
100%.
yeah,
Like I was living in New York around 2019, early 2020, and then moved back to LA. This is during the height of the pandemic, and
Mm.
now I'm back in New York just for like 3 months. And COVID is like running rampant here. But I mean, it's such a crazy thing to think that like 2 years ago, New York looked like different to me because of like,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, and you even had those thoughts like, how will mics come back or shows come back? And man, it's like I'm here and people are doing shows. It's like wild. So that's what I mean. It's just such a resilient.
Yeah, I guess I'm just
Yeah.
looking through the lens of Canada, because Canada right now is like, especially Ontario, no
Yeah.
bueno. Like Quebec is under curfew lockdown. Like you can't be outside past 10 p.m. They just made it so that you have to have be fully vaccinated if you want to buy weed or alcohol. And as soon as they made that mandate that you have to be fully vaxxed to buy weed or alcohol, I think their first doses went up like 6,000 people got their first shot or something.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, what the fuck?
My favorite part about that is like, my whole family's vaxxed except for my, like, one person in our family.
It's usually how most families are. There's
Yeah,
like one
most
person
families,
who's like, I don't
one
know.
person is like, nah. So, but it's funny when people like who aren't vaxxed are always like, they stand with I ain't getting fucking vaxxed.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, like weed, something they love.
There was a lady on the radio, dude, and she was like, I heard a lot about all of the anti-vax information. I believed it. And then they said I couldn't buy my wine, and I was like, I guess I get it.
It's like
she can't have her Merlot. She's got to get that vax in her.
But I mean, that's so telling, because it's just like, how strong was your point of view?
How strong are your values, really? Like,
and I'm not, I'm vaxxed and boosted up because I don't really know anything.
Yeah, we're not fucking scientists.
I'm just scared, bro. So
I didn't even do it because I was scared, because I'm a healthy individual. Like, I haven't had a cold in like 4 years, like, or flu, nothing, right? Like, I haven't even caught COVID this entire time. Haven't even had it once. And I was like, but I'm still gonna I'm fully vaxxed. I haven't gotten the booster yet, but I was like, I'm gonna get the shots because I know it's gonna be annoying as fuck to do anything. Like, you can see the pathway. I'm like, they're gonna make it so that you need this to go in everywhere. It's just the way it's gonna be. Like, you could see this from a mile away.
Or traveling, like, you have to.
Traveling would have been a nightmare without your vaccines.
Dude,
it's like,
yeah. I mean, it's like, even I've had conversation with performers, and they're like, what do I do? I'm like, man, look, if you could do whatever you want, you don't have to get vaxxed. But I mean, it seems like the protocol is to be vaxxed to work on a lot of productions.
If you want to, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So you got to really, put what is important to you, your political view, or trying to navigate your career, or to gain it. Your dreams. I don't know. It's I remember being super, super sick before COVID actually kicked off. It was like in January. And I thought
you had it back then?
Bro, I was in Toronto for the holidays, partying, doing shows. And then I was in Vancouver for Dino Archie's Vancouver extravaganza that he does at the Vogue. He did it again. He does it. He's been doing it for multiple years. And I come back, and my boy was like, you should get like a flu shot. I was like, oh, can I get the flu shot on?
Such a random, like, you were sick and he said this, or like,
he just said,
like, yo, have you heard about these flu shots?
he's like
they got him at the Rexall, fam.
He has like hella anxiety, so I think he was just worried. So I got the shot on Friday, and then on Monday, I just became the sickest I've ever felt my whole life. Not just like that, and I had been sick in September too, but it wasn't as bad as January of that year. And then I remember I couldn't sit. I had a really, like, someone was pressing on my head for hours and days. And I one night I was puking out water in the bathroom, and I was on the ground, and I was legit thinking of calling the hospital, like going to the hospital. And I was like, this is weird for a flu, that I'm thinking of going to the hospital, because I've like had flus a lot of times. And then I broke out in the rashes, and I was like, and they thought it was like shingles.
Damn.
And then I remember when I got better, I got on the train to go to the hospital, to go to my doctor to check the rashes. And I felt the train was sick. Like, I felt New York was sick. Like, I would just
feel it around you.
Yeah. And then that was end of, like, near the end of January, and then COVID hit in March.
Damn. I literally remember the last show I did making fun of COVID. Like, it had broken out in China, And I was literally just doing bits about how like I can't believe we're so scared of this fucking, like, you know how many viruses come out of China, like it's
Yeah.
fine, like what, and then literally everything shut down like 2 weeks later. I was
Dude.
like, fuck.
You know what's funny is I was opening for Ramy Youssef at the Bell House. He did 2 shows. This is in like March, and we were supposed to go to Chicago. Me and I was supposed to go to Chicago to do a show with Donish and Azar, the comedians. Donish from here and Azar from Chicago, and Donish we were at the show and he was like, "Oh man, there's this COVID thing." Like no one knew what it was, and then he's like worried that it might fuck up the show. And I remember sitting down. I was like, "Bro, we're good, bro." And then
I just had the flu. We're fine. I got the antibodies.
Yeah. And then 20 minutes later, I think he came by. He goes, "Dude, they canceled the show." I go, "Fuck." And then I was like still in denial. And then I went to my friend's house in Harlem, and we were like hanging out, drinking, like smoking. And
guess
like,
we'll watch a basketball game. Canceled.
No, it's canceled. We were watching like Hell in High Water, and she fell asleep. I don't know if you ever seen that movie. I think it's a great movie. I've seen it like twice. It's about a bank robberies in Texas. It's shot so beautifully. But she fell asleep. I remember being hella mad that she fell asleep. I was like, this is a fucking Oscar. I don't know if it was nominated for an Oscar, but I remember that's when Tom Hanks and the NBA shut down. It was that night. And then I went home from Harlem, and then the next day it was like, you know, and then we went to a bar, me and some comics from New York, and and the homie I used to live with, that's who the person told me to get the flu shot as well. He was like, "I don't think going outside to a bar is a good idea." And I remember getting into a mad fight with him. I was like, "Man, fuck this shit, bro." And then like being in denial, and then it was shut down. I think like 2 or 3 days it was gone after that, like shut down.
Man, that was so many people. And like I always like look back at that, let's just lock down for 2 weeks just to slow the spread, guys. 2 years later, here we are. Like it's now it's literally morphed into the name of fucking Transformer. It's like Deltacron now or some shit.
It's Omicron.
No, Omicron. Now there's Deltacron, and now there's Flurona. Yeah, which is the flu and Corona combined, and Delta and Omicron combined. It's like, what doesn't kill you comes back in a new way to try to kill you again.
I had like, I was in Canada the beginning of last winter, bro. So I was in Canada the year in 2020 around September for work, and stayed all the way till the following April. So I was there with the 2 stay-at-home orders.
Damn.
Yeah. And I had like
good to go home.
What was that?
You went home for the stay-at-home?
No. I came back in September of that year to do the Just for Laughs tapings.
Ah, okay.
Remember? And then I stayed to do another taping for CBC in Just for Laughs in December. But I just kept getting, it was like crazy. It was like such a grateful, like I feel grateful. It was like I was getting work. So I was like staying in Canada, and then I stayed for the holidays, and then I stayed in March. I did Mott's Clamato and Uninterrupted Canada. I did interview like hockey players, and I stayed. But I stayed. My apartment was back in LA. That's where I live at, and I stayed like for work. But I remember being like, "Holy shit!" I was there for the whole stay at home, and how stressed and within that time, I was like seeing a girl that kind of fell apart, and then I lost 2 of my uncles a week apart from COVID.
Sorry to hear.
That's before there was the vaccines, so this is like around February.
Damn.
Right? Then I went back in April home to LA, and everything was open. It was it was wild because when I landed, it was sunny, obviously, and it was just everything was open, and we had been in that stay at home.
Yeah. Because everybody is fleeing LA. Like you have plans to go back to LA, right? You've been back there, like, but everyone is like, there was like a mass exodus from LA where it wasn't just COVID. People were complaining about like high taxes, like 60,000 homeless people just in the city of, California. Where did they say 60,000 homeless people? It wasn't the state of California. It's in the city of Los Angeles. There's like 60,000, which blows my mind because my hometown is like 20,000 people. I'm like, there's literally 3 times everyone I know in my hometown just homeless in that place.
There's a lot of homeless, bro. It was like,
it's crazy.
It was the echo. So a lot of people were leaving too, I think, because it's like, once people were auditioning from home or working from home,
Yeah.
I think people weighed out the expenses and they're like, well, what am I doing here? I mean, now that I'm back there, you can see it's kind of bubbling back up. But yeah, I'll go back there in April, I guess. I'm just here for 3 months in New York. But I
Mm.
mean, those are the two like hubs I feel like, yeah, I remember um fleeing New York originally when the corona broke, and then it started to pick up when we got to LA. I was just like, me and my homie that I lived with, we both moved to LA,
Yeah.
and we were both like laughing, like, man, this thing is now picking up here.
Yeah, like we just maybe it's us. We're like we're going, we're just
Like
bringing
New
it.
York is popping right now.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah, yeah.
like, it's like within those years, and even now, that like within the 2 years, it's like, that's what I meant by like there's a lot of like, grieving. And then the empathy was like, it's like when people say whatever your beliefs are about COVID and your vaccines and stuff, I find it unsettling when people go, when you're like, oh, this so and so's older, they died, and people are like, yeah, but they were old. It's
Yeah,
just like,
that's
that's such a, and they say it so like it rolls off the tongue so perfectly. It's just like, and that's what I meant by empathy. Like, did we
mhm.
lose, like, where's the empathy there?
It's getting lost definitely because the louder voices that are being echoed constantly are the angry ones, are the
Yeah,
ones that are the most extreme, even though they are the smallest part of the population, right? But like the thing that I really can't stand, and you see it so much, is people wishing ill on others. Not just
yeah,
wishing ill, but like if somebody gets COVID, there's people celebrating, whether they're on the left or they're on the right. Like there's
yeah.
people celebrating when their opponent or their enemy gets COVID. It's like we should be happy that other human beings are getting sick with this horrible disease.
Yeah, it's like when someone's like, see, man, they're vaccinated, they still got it. I go, but that's not the,
Yeah,
like,
like
I don't know anything about it, but
I
I'm just saying
hope
that's
they're
the
okay.
point.
Like, what do you mean?
Yeah,
Like, yeah, like that sucks that they're still vaxxed and they got it. That means like we need to do better. What do you mean? Like, what are you talking
yeah.
about? That's not an
And that's what I
argument
meant
for you
by,
to not have the vax. Like James Corden just got it and he was like, I've been double vaxxed and boosted, and he still got COVID. And he
yeah,
was like, but he's like, I'm alive and I'm fine. I literally don't feel it. I've just tested positive for it. That doesn't mean I'm dying right now of this disease. I just have it and I have to isolate until I can get rid of it, right?
yeah.
But if you are not vaccinated, there's a good chance that you're gonna have a rough time with this.
Really rough time. And
Yeah,
and
man.
look, my dad just got it too, so he's doing a lot better now. And he's like, he's 80, and he has cancer, so it's like, and he's double vax. So, and then his brother got it. That's the one who passed away, and then his
Mm,
brother-in-law, but they weren't vaxxed, right? So it's like, you know, I don't know. It's scary. That's what I mean. It's just like you can talk all this rah rah and all this stuff, but when it hits close to home,
dude,
it's just
yeah.
completely, yeah. It's not even about no political
That's the thing though, is we
stand.
can't we can't just like spark empathy when something happens to us. Like that's this weird system, and I don't know if it's just like a Western thing, but like it's the same thing with politicians. They won't enact a law unless they're like it's something happening to their family.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
think about how long it took for just like gay rights. It took somebody in politics to have like a gay son or a gay daughter before they're like, we need to do something about
yeah,
this.
yeah.
But it's
No,
like,
no,
no, we've been needing to do something about
it's
this.
come
It's like,
before.
yeah, yeah. You just were too like in your own world of being like, no, everything's fine. It's all
Yeah,
good. Like, and then somebody fucking smacked you in the side of the head, and you're like, all right,
yeah.
okay.
That's like, it's just such a stressful. It's nothing. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's very, very stressful. I could tell you from a personal note, it's very, very stressful. Someone you care about, and having it, and then just that worry, that hoping that they're all right and stuff like that. But yeah,
How do we teach empathy though? How do we like get that into like how does that become part of the we're teaching kids about everything else, about like mental health and like don't be addicted to social media, and like don't they put warnings on packets of cigarettes and you can't drink until this age, and but like what about empathy? You know what I mean? Like what about shit like that? I feel like that stuff should be part of the curriculum, if you will.
yeah, and I think it seems so like, it seems so like not easy, but I mean, it doesn't seem hard to, I was just kind of raised in a way, my mom is super religious, and we were always, she would say like, it's as simple as treat people how do you want to be treated, and you
Yeah.
think it's like, whatever, your mom's telling you this, you're young and you're just trying to be a punk, or you're a punk, but then you grow up and you're like, yeah, man, why do I got to be so, I don't have to be ignorant or whack about it. Like, it doesn't seem like,
Yeah, I don't feel good when I'm mean to people. You know what I mean? Like, I
yeah,
don't, it doesn't feel
it's
nice.
just,
Like,
I
simple as
try to
that.
operate in a way, bro, to be honest with you, if I can sleep good at night, you know what I mean? If I can go to bed comfortably with all the actions and my actions throughout, they're not always
Yeah.
perfect.
No.
I have been hurtful and so, but I mean, I've been trying to get better as long as I could do that. But I mean, as long as I can sleep relatively comfortable at night, knowing, I,
I did the best I could today.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think, but I get it. Some people, everyone's built differently, but I feel
Yeah.
like through the pandemic, I think a lot of people, they're just spazzing, man. They're just selfish. And I'm not saying I was that person too. I've been that
Yeah.
person where I've been complaining about like, why can't I go here? And then it's much bigger issue than me trying to go to a restaurant or a club, or trying
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
comedy, or trying to go to the gym. Like, I've been a part of that too. But then I just like, acknowledging that, like, every time I speak like that, like, where's that coming from? Like, there's much things that are more serious than me trying to go to the gym or the club or doing a comedy show. So it's just
Yeah.
kind of reeling myself in.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do, right? Like, because it's so easy to just like complain about stuff. Like, it's so easy. It's the lowest hanging fruit, right? Like, it's almost like I feel like a knee jerk reaction. Like, I don't know if it's just the culture of the time, but we like love to complain. And I think the more that we can like kind of reel that back, the thing that I've like, I'm going to be really honest and really genuine with you and my audience right now, is I've been like hyper focused on my own mortality a lot lately. Like, thinking about like, okay, how long do I have left? You know what I mean? Like, and is that even like a good estimate? Like, could it just happen? Could it just end tomorrow? And just that thought process alone entering my brain throughout like this whole pandemic has made me like just be like, try to be a better person every day. Just like try to be a little more empathetic, because like maybe that day is your last day, and that last great conversation that you had with somebody where you made somebody feel good, they're going to remember that forever, or they're going to remember that for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
They're going to pass that on. They're going to try to do the same. It's like the butterfly effect, basically, right?
I remember, it's funny that you actually, it's not funny that you said that, but I mean, when you said that, that was a thing that I wanted to discuss as well, because I think I'm 41 now. So around 39 years old, um, a few years ago, I started seeing a therapist, and I was telling the therapist about mortality, my own mortality. She got me reading this book about death, and I started to think about it even more, because, you hit 40, as you're growing older, you're just like, shit, man. And it's such a blessing to be able to still be alive. So it kind of happens fast too. You're like, man, I was like 27, but
Dude, I just turned
um,
30 in October, and I'm like, what? Like, where?
it's
What
fast.
doesn't
Yeah.
make sense? Like, you know what I mean? Like, doesn't make any sense.
So, and
Like,
then in the summer, sorry, in like 2 summers ago, a friend of mine passed away, and it still, I still grieve it, but it was like, and then it scared me even more. Like, I remember just it kind of like put you like questioning your mortality. It just kind of heightened even more. So,
mhm.
and then obviously, COVID, and I think people passing is, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people have shared that emotion or sharing those feelings, but not saying it outwardly,
I think that's I think that is honestly why we see so many people just freaking out. A lot of people want to blame like mental illness perhaps on like some things. And maybe you could say that it's like a mental illness, that
Yeah.
this freak out video of this, Karen's lately is, it's the whole thing, right? Like, but maybe that Karen is like, was literally just like thinking about her own mortality and doesn't know how to deal with it. And then when she's told at the store that she can't have what she wants, she fucking loses her mind. And it's not about the thing at the store at all. It's about her own mortality and her not facing that and not knowing how to deal with that.
I mean,
Or
a
like
lot of,
losing a loved one and not knowing how to deal with that.
yeah, it's a lot of times, I'll tell you this story too. I don't know if it has any relation to this, but it's just from what you said. I was doing these, for when you're in Canada and you want to audition for colleges, like to do comedy, it's a thing called Coca. Like that's the organization. You go and then you showcase with other comedians and then in front of all the school heads, and then they book you for that year. I
Okay.
remember I remember doing it one year, long time ago, and I was like, man, I thought I felt I had a good set, but I wasn't a Yuck Yucks comic, right? So a lot of all the comics were Yuck Yucks comics. So what was happening was that Yuck Yucks, I think this is what they were telling me. The schools were telling me, they're like, hey, Yuck Yucks doesn't want you on the shows because they want to book all their Yuck Yucks people. So I was getting kicked off of shows. I don't know if I got kicked off of this. So I was in the mentality of like, man, all these schools must have just kicked me off or don't want me because whatever it was. And I remember Fanshawe was the school in London. And I remember being like, I talked to the head, the person that was there recruiting or scouting. And I was like, man, why didn't I play that school? Like, I mean, it took me a while to get into that school. And then I finally do it, and we're in the bathroom, like me and the person that booked me, like just by chance. And then they're washing their hands. And then he goes to me, he goes, man, I got to really be honest with you. Me and my wife were going through something at that time. And it kind of might have skewed, or I just wasn't in the right place. So I didn't really I forgot what he said in a sense. I didn't book you or I didn't care or something like that. But he was saying, I want you to know that it was like, that's where I was in my situation. And, and it's like, oh shit. I was like, oh, thank you for letting me know. Cause I thought it was like,
You're thinking it's you the whole time, or you thinking it's Yuck Yucks, or you thinking it's like, other comedians or anything, right?
Anything but the truth, right? And I think to your point, it's like, you don't know sometimes when someone's spazzing somewhere, if it's just mental health or if it's like something happened 2 hours ago, or they're just not really like, it's very hard to, as sometimes to look inwards and kind of break it down. You know what I mean? Like
and
with
assumptions,
yourself.
like we make so many assumptions in our environment, and like it does. I mean, it's probably like a skill that we required 5,000 years ago to like stay alive or something. But now it's just like dangerous because we make assumptions and then we spin in our own head of like a million different conversations. Like, I think this is why, I'm assuming this is why I didn't get booked. And then you have 8,000 conversations in your head of like why you're not getting booked. And then you're like, okay, I guess I'm a piece of shit. And it's just something as simple as that. Like,
and the internet don't help too, because the internet, I mean, the comments, like you watch a clip and you don't know the story. So you're just making narratives with your friends, and then those narratives get passed around. And it's just this thing where you just saw a 2-minute or a 30-second clip and you're like, oh, this person's a fucking psycho, or this is a piece of shit or something like that. So you just kind of, it doesn't help. I don't think social media on top of it helps at all.
I think it's like an amazing tool, but we were just never shown how to use it. Like, imagine if at like 5 years old, our parents just like gave us a hammer and they were like, here you go. Didn't tell us what it was. Didn't tell us how to use it. We'd just start fucking hitting everything. We'd just be like hitting our siblings, hitting the fridge, like everything. Right. And the hammer is a good tool. It's not a bad tool. If you use it correctly, it can hold shit together and be really great. But used incorrectly, it can kill someone. And social media is the exact same way. Like,
I'm not laughing at killing someone.
No, I know. I know we keep catching ourselves like that too. Like, death. Yeah, it's so funny. That's how we deal with it though, man.
Yeah. My nieces are on that too, where they're on the internet, like at a young age, like, you know what I mean? And using their tablets and stuff like that. So it's like,
do they have like restrictions or anything, or do the parents kind of let them?
I think so. I want to think so. I don't really fully know. Like my sister probably has a handle on it, but it's like, it's funny. I remember watching what they watch, and it was just interesting. I remember as because obviously, when that type of style of internet or entertainment wasn't around when I was younger, but I remember watching like sitcoms, like Family Matters. Like that was the thing you'd catch me watching. Oh, and now I watch my nieces, or they'll show me that. I'm like, what are you watching?
God, I didn't even think about that.
They're like, we're watching, what did she tell me when she's like, watches a kid, I guess, like he like fills up bathtubs with like cotton candy or M&Ms and stuff. Like, and he's got like 8 million like views. And then it's just like,
oh, what was the message of the episode? You're like, there was none. It was that he could do it. That was the message.
Dude, we're watching Growing Pains, like, like learning about season arcs or
Watching
trying.
fucking Will Smith crying about like not having a dad, but like doing enough by himself, and you're like, yeah, man, fuck, like
Well,
never
that's what I mean.
forgetting. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I wouldn't trade that for anything. Like
at
that
all.
era of sitcoms and such a fucking golden age. So, but it's just funny though now that anytime I'm home visiting in Windsor for like the holidays or anytime just visiting, I'd ask them what they're watching, and it's like very seldom.
Wow.
It's just like YouTube personalities, which is fine. You know what I mean? It's just like such a difference. I was like,
Yeah.
it's like I
Yeah.
feel.
No, it's like, what is this? I didn't mean that's always like, I, that's always the old person thing to say. And I always was like, I don't want to say, I don't want to be that person who's like, oh, these kids today, they're not going to like grow up the proper way. It's like, well, what's the proper way? It's like,
Yeah,
like there's no proper way. It's like,
no.
that's just an old person thing to say. It's like the stuff they're watching now is not as great as the stuff I watched when I was a kid.
No, and there's nothing. I don't think anything
But
wrong with what they're watching. It's like almost like it's like music, right? When people battle, like
yeah.
I'm an older head, I guess. When people battle, like people talk about debate, like new rap to old. I'm like, bro, they're
Mm,
both. I enjoy both of them immensely, but there was just something beautiful about 1997 or 96, like the era of Biggie and Tupac, Mobb Deep, Busta Rhymes. Like, there's just something for me, that was like I was younger. So I'm probably gonna gravitate to
yeah, of
that,
course.
hold that at a higher, because that was my youth and that was such a, discovering Eminem for the first time. But I still enjoy this era like immensely, like with J. Cole, Drake, and Kendrick. So
I
I can
was
still appreciate both, but it is like something where it's like that my favorite time was that time.
Yeah, I was
That
such a
makes me,
weirdo in school though,
yeah.
because every kid was listening to like whatever the music of the time was, and they'd be like, "Johnny, what's your favorite?" And I'm like, "I like Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin," and like, like my dad was like making me listen to like 70s, 60s rock, and I'm like,
I mean, that's amazing. That's like
and I'm like, I had
super,
no
super.
idea what any of the music like was at the time of like development or like growing up. I only
But,
knew like fucking the Beatles and like that. He's like, this is music. I'm like, okay.
but do you know what? Do you know? Yeah, that's. I guess it's like I don't want to sound like an old. It's even when I'm talking to my nieces, it's just more. It's more of an interest. It's more
Yeah,
interesting and
yeah, of
to me
course.
as opposed to
Yeah,
this
and we
is
don't know
not as.
what this impact is going to do for them, right? Like
No.
we don't see the possibility, but maybe they do. You
Yeah, I
know?
mean, they're. Look, fuck, it's like if I grew up in their time, it would probably this is the best time, dude. I had to like get a remote control. I had to like bargain with my parents to let me to watch. I had to watch in time slots. If I
Yeah,
missed it at 8, I wasn't gonna see it. It
it's
was a
gone
wrap,
forever. Yeah,
gone forever. So I mean, like they're living it up. I'd be living it up too if I was
yeah.
their age. I got everything on a screen. You're like, this is sick.
You're like, we built this for you. We
Yeah.
sacrificed.
So,
You just
but it
lounge
has
around.
yeah, desensitized. I think like not desensitized. I think you just become not I don't want to say less empathetic, but you're just seeing stuff a lot more. You're able to watch like almost like car accidents, weird like shooting, like it's crazy. So I don't know if that kind of desensitizes you and makes you less empathetic, but you're just seeing a lot more.
Well, they're like, did you ever watch Black Mirror, like any of the episodes on
Yeah,
that show?
not every episode, but
There
yeah.
was I think the episode was called Archangel or Archangel. And basically it was like set in the future, and the mom is like sold this like Archangel program where you can put a chip in your child and you can see everything. You can see if their heart rate increases, you can tell if they're going to be like prone to get a disease or whatever. You can block out certain things that you don't want them to see. So literally like the girl like cuts herself or something and she's like freaked out by the blood. So the mom like turns on like a blur, and now the blood on her arm is just like a blur. She can't even like see it. It's just like blurred out. So it's just
Oh, shit.
censoring reality. So it's like there is something to be said about like overstimulation with all of these different types of videos that are like too much reality, and there needs to be like a limit on that. But there's also something to be said about the kids that were like not allowed to see anything. I'm worried about those kids too. You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean?
there's
Like,
like an extreme on both
yeah,
ends.
yeah.
Yeah,
There's got to be
that
that middle ground somewhere.
well, I mean, 100% there has to be a middle ground somewhere, which I think is a lot. is like a battle that we all have. It's
Yeah,
finding
of
a
course.
middle ground.
You're like,
And a
maybe I
lot of
should read a book. I've been
yeah,
staring at screens all day.
yeah.
It's insane how we go from like the computer screen to looking at our little phone screen to looking at the TV screen.
Yeah.
Like it's just one after another after another. It's you almost forget to disconnect sometimes.
Bro, I'd say 90% of today was on a screen. I would say from like looking at checking emails to doing all your information, from buying things through this to like now going on a walk, looking at your phone, texts and music. Yeah, it's like I know I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to get better.
Yeah, I think we just need to like slow that down.
Yeah.
What was something I wanted to ask you? Yeah, you grew up in Windsor, Ontario. Did you start stand-up comedy in Windsor?
I did, man. There was like so I was in like sorry, I was putting on incense. I was was I in college? I was. I went to St. Clair College, right? And I always wanted to be a comedian. I actually I wanted to go to radio school, but my mom wouldn't let me because I would have to live somewhere else. And mom's like a very like loving Middle Eastern mother, so she was like, "Can't have you do that." So she's like, "Just get an education." And they're all very supportive of stand up and acting. They were like, I want you to do stand up and acting, but just please get me an education."
Mm.
Which I did. So in college around 18, around 19, I tried my first, it was the Yuck Yucks had this competition, finding the next funniest Canadian comedian. So they went to each city to do preliminaries. And then they came to Windsor, and first time on stage, I bombed. Obviously, I tried to do 7 minutes in 4 minutes. 89X Radio was sponsoring, I think, the event. I had all these stickers they gave us on my jersey. I was wearing a Michigan Wolverines jersey, bomb. And from there, we started to set up an amateur. So there was a Sunday Yuck Yucks amateur night in Windsor, but it was Battle of the Bands originally with comedy at the beginning. And then we convinced them to leave this, to have the stand up keep going after the Battle of the Bands. And we would do Sunday nights. And then from there, I found out about comedy rooms in Michigan. And this is kind of pre-internet, basically. So not pre-internet, but like I'd have to use MapQuest. I'd print out the map and then use a
MapQuest. I remember
MapQuest
that.
to get it to
Yeah.
go. But I would drive the day before to scope out the venue just to see how to get there because I was scared because I was crossing the border. And take my mom's car and drive the route and then come. So if I had a spot Wednesday, I'd go Tuesday just to look at find my way to the building and come back sometime.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then I used MapQuest. I had the like directions. So I started in Windsor, and then I met Jason Rouse one time, and John Doerr, and Terry Clement were touring. Three very, very funny comedians. And then Jason was like, "You should move," because I was thinking of moving to fucking New York and LA, bro. I didn't know anything about green cards. I was just gonna move.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like,
I love that naive, like the
I
beginning, because
know.
I had the same thing, and I feel like every comedian has that. Like, I'll just go to LA. That's
Just
where
go to
everybody
LA.
goes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jason was like, "You should move to Toronto," and then I was like, my buddy who's in a band moved to Toronto with his bandmates, so I was gonna go up and see him, and he got me tickets to see Russell Peters at the Downtown Yuck Yucks Club. This is like 2005, bro,
Damn.
and I never forget that show
Right
because
before he popped.
bro, I felt it in that room. I was like, this guy's gonna pop because you could feel the energy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came back, and then I moved to Toronto. Rouse was like, you should move to Toronto. And then when I moved to Toronto, Rouse moved to England. I remember sitting in his loft. He goes, "Yeah, man, I'm moving." I go, "What? You told me to come here."
Yeah.
So, and then I started, but I did start in Windsor in Michigan. So in Michigan, I was doing open mics, but I was there for like a year, bro. So I would go like, sometimes I think I was going 5 to 7 days a week. Like I would try to go every night over to Detroit and Michigan. And I was doing like rooms in Detroit, open mics at Joey's in Livonia, Dearborn, Holly, Michigan, Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle. So I was going around. I even went to Wichita, Kansas and did guest spots and shit.
Wow, damn.
Yeah,
Dude.
I was out there, bro.
How many years in before you were like feeling like, oh, this is really starting to click? Like I have a good kind of idea of like how I can frame my comedy, so that it's uniquely you, because you do have a uniquely you style of comedy, right?
Oh, that took age. It took 10 years, maybe 8, 10 years.
Yeah, I always say that that seems to be the marker. Like I remember when before I even started doing stand up, and I'm like, I think I wanted to be like an actor or something, and I was like looking at IMDb pages to see like what was the movie that so and so like popped off at, and every single one I'd be like, oh damn, they have a long like catalog of movies that I've never even heard of, and it's all independent films. And every single actor I looked at, it was 10 years
Yeah,
before they finally like got the gig that like sent them off to be like famous or whatever and have a whole career. And I was like,
yeah.
that's so interesting that it's that number, like again and again and again and again.
Well, I started at 20, and I think I got into Just for Laughs homegrown around 30 or 31.
They're like newcomer comic and you're 10
Oh
years
yeah.
in. I love
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah. I was 10 years. And I remember I was talking to Jeff McHenry, who won it when he was like hella young, and he was telling me in the car, we were in LA. He's like, I didn't know that you were that old when you got into homegrown. I don't. He didn't say it in a. He wasn't being like,
He wasn't being rude or
"Hey,"
anything. Yeah.
no, no. And I was like, yeah, man. I was like 31, 30, 31. And then that kind of that not kind of that opened up a lot of doors for me in Canada, because it was like now I was on this platform that's really respected, the festival. Because a lot of times people couldn't figure out my style per se, or they were like, it's too ranty, it's too unpredictable. I don't know where this guy's going, because it's not like the I guess the setup punch that.
Classic. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean I understand, dude. If you saw somebody like ranting, and you're like, yeah, you can't. It's hard to put them on your
But
TV because you're like, you
but
don't
that's
know.
that's the beautiful thing now about the internet, at least, is like everyone has their like fan base, and now when people come to see your show, they know what to expect. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah,
have an
yeah.
album out, you have stuff on TV, so it's like there is that now, like, oh great, but it does take someone taking that chance to be like, let's put them on and then let's get them like more accustomed to you.
I mean, the first time I got any kind of chance was actually Tracy Rideout from CBC Radio. It was Accents on Toronto, right? I think that's what it is. And it was at the Panasonic Theater, 700 people. At the time, I was managed by this individual. And then Tracy was like, do you think do you know what he's going to do? And then the manager at the time was like, I know him personally, and I don't think he knows what he's going to do. I go, I've seen him change it when the host called his name up from the walk. Like I've sat with him and he's told me he's going to do all this, and then he switches it, which was true. I just really loved going on a feeling, on like, an organic whatever.
Yeah, that's always the best.
But
Yeah.
I remember I wrote my set list on my hand, and this is in front again, and then it's Panasonic Theater, and I was super nervous. Nobody's really giving me a shot like this, and I go up and I do my time, but every time I like got like, I had a really fun set. Like I was getting applause breaks. I was even tripped out. I was like, holy shit, it worked.
Did you do a thing though where like you're getting excited that you're getting laughs, so you start steamrolling the laughs, like you just go into
No,
the next thing? You let
bro,
you let it breathe a little bit, like
no, not even let it breathe. I was turning and looking at my set list on my hand, and I finished my set.
you're
I
like,
go,
yeah, you like that shit.
exactly, exactly. So
Yeah.
I went up to sit with my manager at the time, and I'm like, hey man, do you think they noticed? He goes, noticed. He's like, I go, hey man, I had my stuff in my hand. You think they noticed? He goes, yeah. Did you turn around? But the
In
first,
your head though, you're like, I'm so slick right now.
yeah, I
You're
thought I
like,
was so slick up
yeah,
there.
you're
I was
like,
like, they don't know.
quick little peek here.
Yeah, that was the first time Tracy Wright. Was like basically the first time someone entrusted me in a platform like that, and then Just for Laughs really opened up the doors for me in Canada, and it got me my first U.S. agent, the homegrown specifically.
Another thing I wanted to ask you is like, what's the most important thing that you've learned so far in your life?
Um, there's two, but I mean like,
Oh, tell it. Yeah.
accountability and patience.
It's a very good things to learn.
Yeah, and like patience in a sense, like relax. I personally need to relax more. I get super anxious and I like, it's almost like if steam's coming out of my ears right out the gate. Like it's just like, yo, chill out. And then it's just like accountability is like, um, I've been accused a lot of times over time to be super selfish and and self-involved, and that's it's sometimes it's just stand up, bro. You're trying to push and promote yourself, and
Yeah.
you know how it is, bro. You get
Yeah,
in there.
yeah. I've been called that a million times, man. Trust
Yeah, you
me.
forget you're in a convo, you're just rambling about
Like
yourself.
it's
So
my
it's like,
I am my brand. How can I not be selfish? Like if
yeah.
I don't care about me, I don't succeed. I don't eat. What are you talking about? So it's hard to like separate that. I totally get what you're saying.
So I think the third one would be just to be more self-aware.
Mm.
It's three things I've learned. It's just a little bit more self-aware of like, and it's hard. It's yeah. So those are three things I think. But the big one for me is patience, and I'm learning because I'm very emotional and very like pull the like right away. Like I'm like emotional. I'll block you or I'll unfollow you type of guy.
Hmm.
Like 2 days in a fight, I'll be like, oh, we're done. It's I have to just be more. What I'm learning is understanding um, their point of view and understanding where they're coming from. I learned that more. I just try to understand where they're coming from, and that's
Yeah.
helping me out a lot too. So I'd say four things by
Dude,
the end
that's
of the
really
yeah.
hard to like set aside when you like believe you're right in an argument and the other person is looking at you like you're crazy. Like they're like, what, how can you be saying this right now? And you're just like, I don't know how you're not like getting what I'm
Yeah.
saying. And you have to just kind of set that aside and be like, okay, tell me again how like what I just said made you feel. Like just really explain that out, and then don't attack it. Don't have that reactionary thing to it.
Yeah.
It's so hard to
It's
control that.
hard, and I'm still not good at it, but I mean I'm learning, so it's
Yeah.
like I'm learning. So those are the things.
Another thing that I love asking people is like, what's the worst piece of advice you've ever heard or you've ever received? The worst piece of advice where you're like, oh no. You could have
I
taken
guess
it too. Like you
obviously,
could have taken
don't.
it and then found out it was bad, or like you could have just heard it and it was bad.
I guess maybe don't trust. But it's like people say that. I think people say that when they're scorned and stuff like that. And I say that too. I'm like, oh, I don't trust everybody, but I
Yeah.
don't really want to live like that. I don't want to be too trustworthy though, and like be naive or but
Yeah.
I mean, also it's like it's such a heavy thing to carry. Like, yo, no new friends. I don't
It
trust
seems
anyone.
like a movie thing, like some character
Yeah,
is like, I don't trust anybody. Like takes
yeah,
a long haul from a cigarette.
yeah.
Not
So
even
it's
my
not.
doctor. Yeah,
It's
don't
like
trust anybody's great.
yeah, so it's like that. But I mean, and I always say this too to any like if I'm pretty sure you've gotten the two where someone's like, "Oh, tell me advice about comedy." If you want to give advice to somebody that's starting, it's like have fun.
Yeah.
And I know and it's so
Literally have fun. This is the time to have fun. If you're just starting
yeah,
comedy, now is the
have
funnest
fun,
time. I know that's
have
not a
fun.
word, but it is.
It's the same way. That's why it's like when they're like, "That's it," and you're
Yeah.
like, "Man," you forget how
Like, yeah,
how
you'll get it. You'll get it eventually. Like,
you'll be like, "Shit, I'm not having fun."
yeah.
So
Oh man, there was times where I was like doing those like grind or the hustle of comedy, and then I like was like, I didn't have fun at any of tonight's shows. Like it was not a good. They were laughing, but I'm like, meh. Like, and it was either because like I needed to write a new joke, or I was like tired of the material, or just like what was in my head too much, perhaps, or whatever it might be. But like,
I mean, it's good to do a lot of self evaluations on yourself. I find if there's
mm-hmm.
a lot of self checks, talk to yourself nicely as well. That's what's another thing I learned over time is to talk to myself personally, treat myself kindly. Sometimes I'm the worst person to myself than anyone else ever has been. So
Yeah.
those are things.
I'll ask you one last question before we head out here. If you could make a phone call to 15-year-old Dave, what would you tell him?
Oh, love yourself more and be kind to yourself more. And yeah, truly treat yourself way better than you probably treated yourself for a majority of the time. So be
I
kind
love
to
that,
yourself.
man. For anybody watching on YouTube, first of all, thank you because you get the benefits of seeing all this fun promotion stuff. You can go check out Dave's website, davemerheje.com.
Oh shit. You
Follow
have a
him on
website.
Instagram, Dave Merheje on Instagram. And don't forget to go buy the album or listen to it wherever you can. Good friend, bad grammar. Dave, do you want to promote anything else before you get out of here?
Yeah, actually, so it's something it's myself, my co-host Fivos, and Bennett, who's a real therapist. We've been doing a podcast called The Beautifully Anxious, and it's really informative. Ben is a real therapist, and he gives very informative information. And we've had like Ramy Youssef on there. The next episode is going to have Steve Way, who's also co-star on the show Ramy. And yeah, we're really, really, really pumped about it. You can stream it on, you can get it everywhere. It's a
Nice.
podcast.
Yeah, I'll put the links in the description. Just pass that link over to me, man. I'll put that in there. Make sure you go listen to that podcast.
Yeah, and follow us on the Beautifully Anxious.
There you go. Is it Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff?
Instagram. Yes, it's on Instagram, and I believe there's a Twitter. And we had Luke Evans on. I don't know if you know from The Hobbit. And it was that episode is up too, and it was a lot of informative stuff.
Nice. I love that. Well, everybody, that's been today's episode. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, thank you. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review and comment down below. Plus, share the episode with your friend. That always helps. But until next time, I've been your host, Johnny Rogers. Stay classy. You've been listening to The Johnny Rogers Show. New episodes air every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.